Hello, and welcome to the February 18th edition of the AAPI GoCast. It's been a while since we've been on here, but this is officially the start of Season 2, so welcome back. If you didn't know we were doing seasons, just kind of happened. But we are happy to be here, and with me, as always, is Raphael.
Hello.
And we have Testicle Soup, but we're going to call him TS. Speaking of testicles, my dog just had his chopped off last week, so it's all on theme.
Sorry to hear that, Scott.
Hey, that's good.
Yep. No, he feels so betrayed as a 6-month-old puppy. But you got to do what you got to do to keep the pet population down, in the words of Bob Barker. So it is what it is. And we will be hopefully having a couple of folks like Malcolm, and then not sure who else is going to show up there, but he may be showing up. Eugene possibly too. But we actually have a very special guest this week, Julian Robinson. So say hi. How's it going?
Guys, thanks for having me.
And it looks like we do actually have Malcolm coming in, possibly. We just said hi, and you may show up later. And
can you all hear me?
Yeah, we can. You know, we speak of the devil, and he shall appear. We just mentioned that you might be showing up, and here you are.
Good to see you guys.
Great. Well, yeah, like I mentioned, that is pretty much it. I know we're kind of like having a special episode here. Everyone else has met Julian except for me, so just pretend I'm a 5-year-old puppy and I know nothing about your organization or who you are. And, feel free to just tell us what you're all about.
Yeah, sure. My name's Julian. I've been doing a podcast since the beginning of the pandemic called Deep Thoughts, Deeper Talks. Basically having conversations with different groups of people who come from different backgrounds, different ideologies, and just really having interesting conversations about different things that people are experts on.
Awesome. Well, I'm sure we'll disappoint you with us being, quasi non-experts in the gun world, but we pretend to be. It's so much, in fact, that we formed an organization about it, which is great.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd love to dig a bit more into that. I think the first thing that I really wanted to know is, first and foremost, how the group started, and I guess a little bit of a background in regards to why.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess I can take on that one. At first we were one group. Now we are scattered to the four winds, but we're once upon a time, a boy and another boy met each other on Reddit, and we decided to form a gun group based on the fact that, there were a lot of Asian hate crimes happening last year, and especially that the horrible incident that happened in 2020 in Atlanta with that spa shooting. Just kind of like, got me thinking, and others thinking that, it's probably high time for, Asian gun owners to maybe form a group of some kind to defend themselves. And, biggest red flag, I am not Asian, but my wife is. She's Chinese, and my daughter is as well. And part of the reason I was motivated is because we had, not only all those hate crime incidents going on in the San Francisco Bay Area, but we actually experienced one ourselves. We were just kind of walking down the street one day in San Jose, and a group of redneck dudes popped up out of nowhere and just spat out the window, said, "Fuck you, Kung Flu, go back to China." And that's kind of what prompted me to buy my first firearm, because I'm like, oh, holy shit, like what would have happened if no one had been there along with my wife and small child. So got into the research and got my first gun from there. And then it was like right in the middle of the pandemic starting. So when I bought my gun, due to California's lovely gun laws, you have to wait 10 days. But because all the shops got shut down because of COVID, I had to wait like 45 days. So that got me kind of pissed off and looking to get politically active about the subject of guns. And fast forward about a year or so, and here we are with a podcast with the lovely folks you see on here, minus Eugene and Bobby, because they have much cooler lives than we do. Bobby's actually starting his own gun store, which is pretty cool. I think it's like Tactical Dumpling or Dumpling Defense. That's it.
Lovely name.
Yep.
But yeah, that's awesome. And it's really odd, but I feel like every time I have a conversation in regards to a particular topic, something will either come about in current events that's like very relevant to the conversation, or I'll stumble upon watching something that will kind of spark a conversation from what we're discussing. And this one's a bit unfortunate, but I'm sure you guys heard about that recent incident of another Asian woman being. I think she actually died. She was being stalked and harassed by some gentlemen, and it ended fatally. And there's the whole discussion in regards to why exactly that individual was even allowed to be released as soon as he was. I think he had done like similar crimes like that in the past, and next thing you know, he ended up killing this innocent Asian woman. What are your thoughts in regards to? Oh, you did a little switch over there. What are your thoughts in regards to the ramping up of these type of crimes, especially in New York City, with the way in which the laws are as far as self-defense and ownership of guns go?
Well, New York is where more or less I am. So at least in regards to New York City, I think that over time, it's been a long time since Bernie Goetz did his thing on the subway, and I think that there's somewhat of a culture of like, we can't defend ourselves, and that's simply, the de facto way of the world. And you'll notice that in places where there are, even places where the stereotype might be, these people are, hateful racist rednecks, you still won't notice as many hate crimes, even proportionate to minority populations. And I think that has more to do with culture. I'm not saying this is an individual fault on anybody's part, except perhaps legislators. But the idea that one can't defend oneself is so ingrained into the culture in New York, especially the city, that it's I don't want to say natural consequence, but it follows.
Right.
Well, yeah, and there was just that tragic incident a couple of weeks ago. I remember where it was like a Citibank employee, I think, just got pushed into the subway tracks. That was, another just pretty blatant example, and I really don't think there's been much follow-up on it other than people wringing their hands on LinkedIn about it. I
mean, that is a house of
where all the
cards
cool
type
kids
incident.
go for their social media, by the way, when you have jobs. LinkedIn, look it up. It's like TikTok, but for people 40-year-olds and, a mortgage. It's great.
But just not to dwell too much on the topic, but I mean, Julian, you live in New York City, right?
Yeah.
So as do I. And New York City has stricter laws than New York State does.
Yeah,
I know
but
we're
barely
discussing it in this episode, but it gets really. The laws are so ridiculous, and to kind of touch on what Raphael was saying, the culture in New York City has been pushing towards this. The government, people are always looking to the government.
For me at least, I've been following on social media. I follow some accounts on Instagram that do a lot of reporting on Asian crime, and it's just insane.
Malcolm,
I would say most of the occurrences are happening in New York or California, and it's just a lot of factors just kind of all just coalescing at one, in one kind of space. You've got really dense populations, tons of different groups of people all jam packed together. There's COVID, there's pandemic, there's shutdowns, you can't defend yourself. And then just high crime in general because of, decades of bad policies and a bunch of other crap. So it's just insane seeing all these footage and local stories, because they're definitely not getting covered nationwide, but local stories of, Asians and just get old, senior citizens getting attacked. Like you said, that woman getting stalked all the way home and then getting stabbed in her own apartment. It's just crazy. So I don't it hasn't gone away. When we started the group in, May of last year, it's we thought oh, this is a perfect time to do this. And it hasn't gotten any better in that sense. It's like, if anything, it's like there's an even bigger need for, not just Asians, but, there's also African Americans and Latinos and all of them just getting comfortable with the Second Amendment, getting armed, and learning how to protect themselves, because it's not getting much better out there.
Right. And I want to ask a question and ideally have everyone answer, but I want to start with you, Malcolm. Like, in regards to like your upbringing and how you were raised and everything, how has that, I guess, impacted the way in which you view guns and everything? Like, was it something that was very prominent growing up, or?
No, not at all. So I would say my upbringing is like half and half. Like, as a kid, like a young kid, I was born in California, but I grew up in Texas. So growing up, like, very protective parents, and they'd be like, oh, don't touch guns. That's dangerous. That's something that they were never used to. But then when I became a teenager and kind of just started branching out and just wanting to do, teenager stuff and hanging out with friends, and growing up in Texas, I think that kind of helped a lot for getting comfortable with firearms, because that was the first time I ever shot a gun. Was my friends invited me out to their, his grandpa's ranch, in like the middle of nowhere. It's like, hey, let's shoot these guns, and like my grandpa is gonna like obviously supervise and show us how it's done and be safe about it. And so I was very lucky in that sense to be introduced in that fashion, because like I said, most Asians aren't. That's not happening for most Asians. Like, they're, I don't remember the figure, but it was like 60% of all Asians in America are either in California or New York. It's some figure like that. So they're definitely not getting that experience. But I looked out in that sense, and that kind of led me down the rabbit hole of firearms, and just like, this is awesome. It's, they can be dangerous, but if you, do it right, learn to be comfortable with them, they're fantastic. They can save your life potentially, and it's more than just like a fun pastime.
Right. And Raphael, what was your upbringing like when it came to guns?
Yeah, so I'm kind of the traditional gun owner in the group. I was raised around guns, raised with guns in the house. Guns were just kind of a normal part of life. Everybody I knew growing up hunted or had somebody in the family who hunted. It was just extremely normal, even up here in New York. And kind of as I became a teenager, I realized that, this is not a normal thing that everybody just does. And that was really strange to me. And then I realized how many people absolutely despise the fact that, civilians can own guns. And the more I realized how widespread that was, the more I wanted to do something about it. So here I am, activisming.
Very cool. It's funny. My girlfriend's grandpa, he has like a shit ton of guns, and he has them like locked up in like this big like treasure chest thing that he has. I've been meaning to look at them next time we go upstate to see him, but like I we like to call him every now and then. He's like in his 90s, and like I like asked him about his guns, and like he said something along the lines of like he's like if I were to take him out today, like they'd lock me up or something. Like he's like, I have way too many guns, and he's like because he grew up in like the early 1900s. Like you didn't have to, like, everyone had guns. You didn't have to like do this whole dance that you need to do now. So it's kind of funny like seeing his perception. But anywho, Scott, what about you?
Yeah, so definitely didn't grow up in a gun-owning household, but it's kind of funny because, like, got a lot of military history in my family. Grandpa in World War II, my dad was in Vietnam, but, like, he had a shotgun. I think it was, like, a Mossberg Maverick 88 or something like that. Then he just kind of kept up in the upper reaches of the closet, not locked up, but we were just, like, told, don't go in there, don't touch that. And so, yeah, that was kind of, like, the extent of my exposure to guns, like, growing up. And, basically took me like 35 years before I even bought my own first firearm due to that incident that I mentioned. So, and from that standpoint, it's been an interesting journey going from like 0 to 60 into the gun world. Now I've got like 10.
Wow.
Because they're fun, mostly.
Yeah.
Not because I'm a Trump supporting doomsday prepper. I actually voted for Biden, which I get endless amounts of shit about from these guys. But we're a big tent here, so it's great.
I'm glad you mentioned that, though. It shows that, like, in regards to enthusiasm with guns, it's not something that is necessarily left or right. It could be for everyone.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
the farther left or right you go, the more people like guns. But in general, I mean, you don't need to be politically aligned at all to feel the need to defend yourself. And you definitely don't need to be politically aligned at all to enjoy shooting things, because that's really a lot of fun.
Mhm.
As an aside, my grandparents aren't particularly gun loving people. They don't dislike guns. They have a 22 in the closet. But when I was out in Indiana, I was showing them one of the guns I got because they were kind of curious, and I mentioned, "Oh yeah, I have that in the car," and they were just like, "Oh wow, that's really cool." Like that, we didn't have guns like that when I was a kid. Because yeah, it was kind of interesting. I was expecting there to be some kind of tension around it, but no, they were just like, "Oh, that's cool."
Nice.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
coincidentally,
that's
the guns they had as a kid are the only ones allowed on the California roster, so it all kind of works out.
So I think this is actually a perfect segue to another topic I wanted to focus on, which is the history of guns. Like, could you walk me through your understanding of the origin of guns? Like, from the little bit of knowledge, the little bit of research I did before this, it seems like it was invented in China, but like,
Mostly
correct
true.
me if I'm wrong.
So gunpowder was invented in China in the 13th century. The Chinese used rockets, so essentially hand cannons that they would. It was basically a stick mounted with a rocket on the end, and they'd use those to send at enemy battlements. Once the Europeans figured it out, they were like, "Oh, we should make this with metal and bigger." So they did, and they invented cannons. And then everybody who was able to forge metal figured out gunpowder and figured out that they went together, and that's when they started being mounted on ships, miniaturized. And then in the early 19th century, we invented smokeless powder and cartridges, which are the foundation of pretty much all modern firearms. Black powder weapons are actually not legally firearms in the United States.
Interesting. So the thing that fascinates me about this is, first off, AAPI go, China. I just find it a little interesting that it essentially was conceived in the East, but then, to your point, I guess advanced and modernized in the West. But I just find it kind of interesting that the place in which it was conceived seems to have a very negative connotation to that device now. Like, do you have any thoughts on why that might
Could
be?
I add to that?
I mean, currently, yeah, go ahead, Malcolm.
Oh. Yeah, so
Yes,
you wanna go first?
starts
It
with
depends on the
communism
country.
and rhymes with bomunism.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
Oh.
I mean, it really does. It does depend on the country and the form of government controlling that or running that country. Like, yeah, it's kind of crazy that I think for most of Asian countries, it's pretty safe to say that most of them, like, if you're a regular citizen, you're not allowed to own guns, or it's very hard to. So, if it's like places like China or, North Korea and Hong Kong, it's because of control, I would say. It's like they don't want their citizens to have that kind of like power in that sense. And then with like more like democratic countries like Japan, South Korea, even the Philippines, even though I would say they're even a little bit more like free in that with firearms, but still not anywhere near like the U.S. I think it's just like a culture, like something like a cultural thing. It's like a historical thing. I'm not an expert on it, but like that's a really good point. It's just like, it's kind of ironic that like kind of like the origin of firearms, and none of the citizens, or barely any of the citizens, are able to even get one. You either have to be like a licensed hunter or like a competitor, like in the sport, to be able to do it. In some countries like South Korea and Japan, like the police station will hold the gun for you, so you can't even bring it home. Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Yeah, I wanted
This
to add
is
to that.
actually the standard worldwide.
Can
To be clear, this is not unique to Asian
True.
countries. There are very few countries on Earth with as permissive firearms laws as we have, and most of them that's the case because their government isn't old enough to have made those laws, or they don't have a
Or
government.
it's like, you know, what's the old quote from Mao? Political power comes out of the barrel of the gun, but the guns get taken away as soon as the revolution happens. I added that last part, but the first part's the quote.
Yeah. And Raphael makes a great point. We are the exception. We're not the norm, because we're one of 3 countries that has, rights to own firearm in our constitution. The other 2 being Mexico and Guatemala, I think. So yeah, we're absolutely the exception.
I mean,
The case
So is
was
it
like
safe to
Canada
say, well,
didn't
before
have the Second
we-
Amendment, and that's what happened there. You know, Trudeau could just basically arbitrarily say no more assault weapons, and no one could do anything because it wasn't enshrined in the Constitution.
I wanted to add to what Malcolm was saying. Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, Mr. Soup.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Go
Yes.
right
So-
ahead, Mr. Soup.
Yes. So I like how you guys get. I'll give
We
you the
know
every time
what
you
it
say it.
means.
So the Philippines, they're actually very pro-gun. I don't know if you. I mean, like I know Japan does have very strict laws, but the Philippines, they definitely do. They're like it's difficult to get one. Like it's not. They don't have a Second Amendment, but they're definitely pro-gun. Like you have to jump through a lot of hoops, though. Unfortunately. Yeah. But again, I think
What I want to say too
definitely
with Japan, it's like that's a World War II occupation holdover, because from what I understand, I read up on it, it's like, you know, private gun ownership was actually during Imperial Japan was actually pretty somewhat commonplace, I guess, because, you know, preparing for, you know, possible invasion. But as soon as the Allies came in and took it over and occupied it for the better part of, you know, 15 years or so after World War II, they just never reinstated that.
Well, we don't need to do a deep
Yeah.
dive on firearm ownership laws in every country. Suffice it to say, in pretty much every country except the Czech Republic and America, they're pretty awful. Czech is awesome. U.S. is pretty good compared. I mean, they actually have better laws than us. But other than that, across the board, the rest of the world, not a big fan of that.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it seems like regardless of where we are right now in the U.S., it seems like for the most part, from a standpoint of just the ability to attain a gun, we're much better than the rest of the world in this current moment.
Ability to legally attain a gun, absolutely.
Right. But it has gotten harder.
Yes. So
Yeah.
I'm going to make my bias clear right now. I am hardcore guns. I think that gay trans couples should defend their pot plants with fully automatic assault weapons. And I mean that term in the actual
Amen.
sense. I am all the way on that end of the spectrum on guns. But over the course of the last decade or century or so, gun ownership has become difficult in the U.S. So it started off with the NFA, which is the law that bans automatic weapons unless you pay a tax, and then short barrel rifles and shotguns unless you pay a tax, and silencers unless you pay a tax. So unfortunately, it didn't stop there, even though that's one of the stupidest laws made, because it banned a lot of things that were useful and actually really good for self-protection. Then the Gun Control Act was enacted after Kennedy was assassinated, which means you could no longer get a gun shipped to your house. Then the Brady Bill in the 90s mandated background checks for all firearms purchases from dealers, which is one that most people have no problem with. Generally speaking, I'm not a fan on an ideological level, but I acknowledge that it works practically. And then since then, there was the assault weapons ban in 1994 that expired in 2004, which banned some features of rifles nationally, but that expired. It didn't really cause any change in crime rates, and it was generally regarded as a failure. Since then, most restrictions are on the state level. So yeah, there's been a progressive closing in over the years, but since 1934, we haven't had a large-scale assault on American gun ownership. Despite some talking points that you might hear.
California says hi.
Yes, on a federal level. Different states have done different things that aren't very nice, but New York started well before the Gun Control Act. The Sullivan Act is 1914.
And I would say, like, for your listeners at least, it's like, I think there's a differentiation that should be made. It's like, while we are the most, I guess, lax in terms of gun control laws compared to the rest of the world, that doesn't mean that we don't have enough. Because like Raphael said, and I think we're all in consensus here, we have way too many gun laws already, especially on the state level. It's pretty ridiculous, you know, and because the evidence is all of those minorities, you know, Asians, and being attacked and not being able to defend themselves. That's your evidence right there. It's like, there was another situation, not even minorities. There was a situation that I'm sure all of us here know about, that woman in New Jersey that she like separated from her longtime abusive boyfriend. She applied for a concealed handgun permit, whatever they're called in New Jersey. It's ridiculous. It's notoriously hard in that state. And in the process of applying for it, because it was so drawn out, she got murdered by her ex-boyfriend while she was waiting through that process. So if she had a gun, would she have potentially been able to save her life? Maybe. We'll never know. So it's situations like that. That's like, you know, when we hear people on the gun control side say like, oh, well, we're like the most lax out of the whole world. It's like, yeah, but that's not a good metric to base it off of. We already have way too many because people aren't able to defend themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to segue this into the next talking point, if I could. Which is, you know, what are the talking points against guns and why are they bad? One of them is the U.S. has horrible gun control laws compared to the rest of the world from a gun control perspective. And yet we're not even, I don't believe we're in the top 5 countries for gun murder or for gun deaths. And we are not even in the top 10 for gun homicides. So what gives?
But statistically, we're also the top in terms of defensive shootings, which is, you know, that's a good statistic that never really gets brought up. The amount of defensive instances, because there are so many guns, therefore you have to defend yourself a lot more, and that's the whole reason why you want one.
But one of the most amazing things is in the US we have more guns than people, and we still have a lower homicide. We're still not even in the top 20 homicide rates, which I think speaks well to the effectiveness of both civilians understanding guns and it being a normalized thing. So if in a country like the UK, if somebody has a gun, it's pretty safe to assume they're either a cop or a criminal. Or like a handgun
or fox hunting.
In the US, if you break into a random house anywhere in the country, unless it's New York or California, you're going to get shot. Or at least the chances are greater than 50% that you're going to get shot if you break into a random house in Gary, Indiana. And I think that has a lot to do with it as well.
No, yeah, that makes total sense. And can you maybe touch upon, because I think another negative connotation that comes with guns is like people feel as if they're in more danger having the gun in their home than not. Like
hey Julian,
something that can like come about.
That's a really common fear, but it's really simple it's often held by people who aren't familiar with guns. The answer to that is training. So it doesn't all just boil down to buying a gun. Like that's step one.
Right.
The next step is learning how to use it effectively. And believe me, there is a lot to learn. We ran a workshop with a notorious instructor out in the San Jose area. And this guy's really good. And there was a lot of stuff that I was taught that weekend that I had no idea about before. We went through some really, really amazing stuff. There's everything from movement to gun handling to, you know, how to hold cover, what's cover versus actual, you know, protection. And if you're trained properly, nobody's going to take your gun unless you're asleep.
Right.
And then on the flip side, what's kind of interesting is like safe storage. We had a, Walk the Talk America on our podcast a couple of weeks ago. They were like big advocates about suicide prevention in the gun world and trying to, you know, find the right balance between safety and responsible gun ownership. They're a really great organization. But anyway, you know, their big kick is, you know, practice getting your gun out of the safe as much as you practice aiming your gun and trying to shoot something, because the technology right now, there's almost like no excuse not to have like a good quick open safe device. I've got one by Vault-Tec. It's like it takes me 2 seconds, and I practice with it all the time just to get it out of the safe. But mostly that's because I have kids in the house, and I wouldn't want them just randomly finding my gun in an insecure location. That said, I'm not a big fan of safe storage laws because that kind of like it. You know, anytime there's a mandate on something, it's like, you know, that's a little bit crazy. It kind of violates the Fourth Amendment. How are you going to really enforce that without random inspections by the police to make sure that you have safe and proper equipment? But I think everyone should have a safe storage device, but it's just, you know, enforcing it. How do you do that without violating rights?
Hey, can I add something to that? So,
Go for
I know
it.
we were
No.
kind of
Of course you can. Okay. Just kidding.
taking a little bit of a step back, like, you know, debunking some of the myths. Like, hey Scott, can you mute your mic? No. I think the dog.
Scott has a
upset.
freshly testicle deficient puppy bothering him right now.
Yeah. So just to kind of backtrack a bit on like the misconceptions about like guns and stuff, like in other countries. I think this past 2 years during the pandemic, there was a bunch of mass stabbings in China. And there was even, I think there was a mass shooting where a guy used a shotgun. And like guns are completely illegal in China. Like, how did you get it in there? You know, there was a mass shooting in Russia, I believe, as well. And they have pretty strict laws as well.
No, they don't.
I think there were 2 shootings in the UK. One guy did a shooting with a shotgun. And one person shot someone in the head from BLM in the UK. Again, countries that have extremely, extremely high quote-unquote gun control. It doesn't stop violence. I think I don't remember what the political term is. I mean, I don't mean to kind of go that route, but I think
it's pretty...
What was that, Ralph?
Yes, I think it's pretty simple. I think it's pretty simple to summarize. Heroin's completely illegal.
What is?
Heroin is completely illegal.
Exactly,
for
yeah.
civilian use in the United States. I think that's all you need to say to explain why banning things generally doesn't work as a general rule.
Right. And if you guys want to touch upon the wealth gap and just how that impacts the level of accessibility of firearms.
Hey, Ralph, can I get this one?
And can Scott go on mute?
Yeah. I think his dog.
Scott has been wrangling a puppy.
Yeah, the puppy's still upset about the whole vasectomy or whatever they did.
Yeah, let me grab an example. And TS, would you grab the wealth gap?
Hey, Scott, can you mute your mic?
Yeah.
Scott, can you... Oh, so
that's not me making all that noise though right now.
It is.
Yeah.
So while Ralph goes to get his stuff, can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we live in New York City, Julian. So a prime example of the wealth gap would be if we look up the line out, and I'm sure we can provide the links to you for your viewers and for our viewers, the initial cost for a premise permit for a pistol in New York City is $340. That's just, you're not even guaranteed to get it. Then you have to pay about $88 for your fingerprints. So you're already over $400 in, and you don't even have a gun. I mean, if how many people can afford that? Like, what's the median income for someone in New York City? It's like, what, 50K maybe? That's like being, you know, like, how many quote unquote, politicians are always talking about, oh, the single moms, oh, the parents are struggling. But like, there's a direct correlation there, you know, like these people who are making 50, 40K a year or making it, you know, check to check, they can't afford that. So they basically can't afford to defend themselves. Just, I mean. Yeah.
So even in upstate, let's take, for example, I have here the very basic bitch of ARs. This is a New York legal AR15. So, you know, very, very basic weapon, very easy to, relatively cheap to get. Would you want to take a guess at how much it cost?
Hmm. I'm just gonna shot in the dark say $600.
This is an $850 rifle, and this is the cheapest one in the shop.
Wow.
Or the cheapest AR in the shop. That's just, this is the most basic one I own. This is, but that's kind of what the level we're talking about. It's a mechanical instrument that's very high quality, takes a lot of expertise to design and machine, or in some cases. It's already not cheap. Adding more and more barriers on top of that, you're looking. I have guns that I've put multiple thousands of dollars into, and that's just to make them, a little bit nicer. But that's the kind of scale you're looking at, and then adding, registration fees and gun insurance. To take another recent example on top of that, it quickly climbs way out of reach of the average Joe on the street, unless they want to dump a lot of their time and skimp out on maybe feeding their kids.
Well, I want to add to that. It comes down to also the application fees, right? Depending on what state you live in, it doesn't cost much. It'll cost you, you'll pay maybe a one-time fee for your background check, and that's it. You can probably buy a pistol. I mean, you guys unfortunately I still live in New York City, but you guys know, you can probably buy a handgun for $300, right? I mean, maybe not right now.
Not now.
Not now.
There's
let's say 400.
If you're buying from a fentanyl dealer, downtown, like most criminals do, then sure, you could get it for that much.
No, street prices have also shot up. There is everybody wants them.
All right.
So
point is
demand has,
let's say $500 for something very basic, right? $500. Let's say pre-pandemic, $300. But you're adding again another, in New York City, for example, another $400 on top of that. You just literally doubled the price. So you literally pretty much kicked out multiple demographics, multiple people from different socioeconomic backgrounds just by doubling that fee.
Yeah.
All in the name of quote unquote safety. All in quote unquote for your safety.
Well, it's kind of funny though. I mean, I know I bag on California gun laws a lot because, there's a lot to bag on, but, we actually don't have as many registration fees or permitting fees that you guys do. We just have, basically you have to pass your firearms safety test, which is pretty minimal. It's $50. And then you have to pay your FFL fees and gross transfer and all of that. But the only permit you actually have to pay for is CCW, and that's slightly hard to get depending on how liberal your county is. So Santa Clara County, you basically literally have to bribe the sheriff with political donations or iPads to get on the list for a CCW permit. So kind of puts it out of the reach of most people there. Another thing that's kind of interesting is that because we have the safe handgun roster, guess who's exempt from that? Police officers. So there's a site called callguns.net where if you want to buy a P365, you're basically paying double MSRP from a cop who is authorized to buy that, because you're not allowed to buy that same exact gun that's legal in every other state at retail, Scott, because of our weird roster.
Scott, can you explain that in normal language for the people who don't know what that is?
Which part?
Yes.
Because
what?
I can make it really stupid. Hang on. I can make it really stupid. California, no good new guns that are safe. California old clunky guns that are less safe. Therefore corruption.
Plus 5 minus 3 equals 2, and that's the generation Glock that we can buy because of that roster.
Yeah.
And then there's
pretty much California has a ban
stamping, which doesn't exist. So it makes any new handgun impossible to get on the roster.
So, in a nutshell, on the East Coast, gun laws more favor registration and magazine limits. But on the East Coast, it's more you have to register everything. You have to get licenses for everything. On the West Coast, the approach tends to be more, you can still buy this. We're not going to make you get a permit or register. We're just going to limit the year of the gun. It has to be designed in 1994 or before, I believe, for pistols.
Well, that's the
to
thing.
An arbitrary
it's not
date
a
of
year.
design.
Well, yeah, it's not really a year. It's just this. It has to be
it's a roster.
Anything beyond designed after 1994 like won't meet the requirements of microstamping because no manufacturer actually does microstamping on their guns. Therefore, new guns can't
Yeah.
get onto the roster. I mean, that's like my basic
So to
understanding
simplify
of
it, they made a list of guns available at the time, and you can't buy anything newer than that unless it can imprint the gun's serial number onto the cartridge of the bullet as you shoot it in microscopic letters, which is obviously not feasible due to the forces involved in firing a gun. So that's the conundrum you're faced with when you're deciding whether to live on the east or west coast.
Yeah,
This
and
has
then,
gone down a rabbit hole already.
Julian, on like, yeah, and then like on top of your question about like how it there's like a wealth effect, and like a good segue on bullets is ammunition, and that's another thing that a lot of people aren't talking about. A lot of people are complaining about it, but it's like that's like a whole nother like layer on top that's creating a gap in availability for people who are like less well off. So obviously COVID kind of spurred that like huge like inflation of price for ammunition, but you know, with what the Biden administration is doing with specific like rifle ammunition, that's just an example of how that affects the price of increasing. And it's just artificially increases the price of ammunition. So he banned he banned basically all Russian imported ammo. And that's just caused a huge surge because now there's less supply of it. So that's just another thing that just adds on top of the burden for people who don't have as much money. I've personally spoke with people who recently bought a firearm or bought a firearm in the past year and a half. And they're like, yeah, I've only shot this once because I just can't afford to go to the range. Like you have to pay to go to the range. You have to pay an hourly fee, and then you got to pay for ammunition. And it's, you know, you can easily burn through it. And it could be like, it could be a huge, financial liability for them. So
well, let's bring this down into cold hard.
There's a lot.
Let's bring this down into cold hard cash terms. Currently, if you want to buy 9mm ammunition, which is what goes in most handguns these days, it's kind of the de facto standard. If you're buying it at a gun store, it's going to run you about 50 cents per round. So that's $1 every 2 shots that you shoot. That it used to be 20 cents a round, and now it's just been steadily inflating, due in part to some policies that make it that way. But you can understand how that could be a little bit of a cost barrier for some people.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And then if you have a Desert Eagle like I do, 50 AE is $2.50 a round. So it's ridiculously fun to shoot, but it's expensive. It's like $50 for a box.
You might as well just load
But it's
dollar
worth
bills
it.
in there at that point.
So I can actually speak a bit more on the ammo issue. Sorry, I'm late, everyone. So to introduce myself really quickly, I'm Eugene, and to give you an idea of what it looks like on the other end of the counter. So at the range that I work at, we struggle, especially with the start of COVID and then all the protests and riots during the summers, to source ammunition reliably. It got to the point where the owners couldn't get contracts with their usual sellers, and instead it fell on the employees to find ammo themselves to source and then be compensated back for it. And during that time, not only was there like a higher financial barrier of the cost of ammunition, but just getting it. You were limited to a box per day. We had to like keep strict eyes on what groups came in, who was together, because we only sell a box per person. And it was ridiculous because the only person that could actually get that ammunition and a decent supply for us was a guy who was a former merchant marine. Like, he had enough money to be able to buy pallets of ammunition for himself that he then sold to the range at cost. And it's not like it's gotten a whole lot better. It's definitely not pre-pandemic levels by any means. There has been some improvement, but we're still struggling to find ammunition like anywhere close to like 2019 levels. And that reflects to our customers as well, you know, who aren't happy paying our prices But I keep telling them, listen, if you can find ammunition at a better price, let us know, because we need it as well.
Yeah. And even like the secondhand market, where people are auctioning off ammunition. I mean, they're just gouging left and right. I mean, it's not even an option for people who are on a tight budget to even go that route of like buying it from someone else. So it's insane. And it's like, everyone is, bearing the brunt of that, but especially people who are on a tight budget.
Wow. Yeah. Like it's almost as if like when like when you look at all of the hurdles that go into being able to get the gun, it's like, okay, like you have to get fill out the paperwork, you have to get your self printed, you have to wait and do the background check. And then once you finally are able to get the gun, you have to like pay all this money to be able to purchase it. Then you have to figure out how much to get to be able to even practice and be able to excel at it before you're comfortable. And at the end of it, you could be looking at thousands of dollars, which isn't necessarily feasible for everyone. Since I think, like I read somewhere once that they said that I think like most people don't even have enough in their savings account to ensure that, if there was ever a rainy day, they'd be all right. So it's definitely something that's more of a luxury for some, and unattainable for many.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, absolutely. And it's kind of like how the government like dealt with cigarettes, right? There's like, we're not going to ban it outright, but we're just going to make people who smoke cigarettes feel the pain of it via taxes. And, that's kind of the route we're seeing the administration or the government go with firearms and ammunition. It's just like, we will never be able to ban these, right? Because of the opposition, but we'll make it as hard as possible for people to do it. And it sucks because it's like Raphael and Soup said, this is a right that we were bestowed upon us as the citizens of the U.S. We should have the right to do this. It shouldn't just be the wealthy who are able to do
specifically,
it. And I think that's kind of our motto with our group and a lot of other groups, like newer groups like this. Is like, we want to make it as accessible as possible. We want to normalize it as much as possible. It's not just something for elites or the wealthy to be able to have fun or be able to protect themselves, or have celebrities hire security groups. We're not the only ones that get to have protection.
And Malcolm and Raphael, do you think that when it comes to the legislations that are put into place and the hurdles that people have to forego because of the government, do you think that the government is doing this in an insidious manner where they're trying to reprimand people, or do you think that it's just misguided?
Asked me a couple of years ago, I would have said it was misguided. The more I've seen, the harder it is to deny that. Let's put it very bluntly. People having guns makes politicians very uncomfortable as a general rule, especially when politicians enjoy power and acquiring more power. The thing that politicians do, and it's simply a fact of life. So I think that at some level, perhaps it's not conscious, but the idea of civilians being well armed makes most politicians extremely uncomfortable, and that's what we see put forward in the legislatures.
Well, and it's purely political too, because if you look at things like what Gavin Newsom just announced today, sort of direct response to the Texas abortion laws, and people being able to like do a citizen's arrest for people involved in an abortion. He just announced a plan to allow the same thing for assault weapons. Essentially saying, citizens, you can enforce an assault weapons ban. If you have suspicion somebody has an illegal gun, you can just go ahead and report it to the police and initiate a red flag law.
Actually, quick tangent, if I may, I'd like to clear up a misconception that I think almost everybody has. So, Julian, I'm sure you've heard the term assault weapon before. That's probably, So did you know that there's really no such thing as an assault weapon. It's an arbitrary definition.
Mm.
So different places, it means different things. The term kind of comes from assault rifle, which is an actual specific type of rifle. It's a medium-sized rifle in an intermediate caliber, which means something that can be used for distance shooting, that can shoot fully automatic. So it's generally also called a battle rifle. It's pretty much standard for what a soldier would get or a spec ops guy would get going into the field. And now assault rifles are very hard to get in the U.S. because, of course, fully automatic is very difficult to get. So some people seem to have turned that term into assault weapons to sound scary. But really there is no such thing. It means different things everywhere. And every place that has an assault weapons ban has a different definition of that.
Yeah. Well, and going back
so
to
when
the
you hear
point
that term
about,
bandied around, it usually means a
Yeah.
black, scary-looking gun. That's
exactly.
it.
Well, and the funny thing about it, though, is that because of the ammo shortage, you're probably better off getting a black, scary-looking gun because it'll be more accurate and requires probably less training and marksmanship than a handgun would, in a sense, because it's like, you're one and done. You're probably going to take your target down. It's pretty lightweight. My wife can, handle my AR-15 like no problem. Whereas she can't hit the broadside of a barn with my Beretta 92 FS, which is a, pretty common 9mm handgun.
Well, yeah, handguns are very difficult to shoot relative to rifles. Any idiot can get good with the rifle pretty easily. Handguns are trickier.
Mm. Yeah. And what is it about handguns that makes them trickier?
So with the rifle, you have. Let me grab my example.
It's
So with the
basically
rifle, you have
physics.
2 points. You have 2 points of control and 3 points of contact. So with the rifle, the butt hits your shoulder. So this provides stability. Then you have a hand on the grip, which also provides stability. And then you have a third hand, or a second hand, shoulder's not a hand, on the handgun in a C-clamp grip, if you know what you're doing. And so that gives you more control over the recoil, as well as more leverage. So the gun's trying to rotate backwards because of the recoil.
Right.
But I have longer reach over it, so I can control the impulse more easily. A handgun is a lot smaller and has a lot less leverage. So it's a smaller amount of force due to the rounds used. But that torque is being controlled through your forearms and wrists instead of through your entire arm, shoulder, and torso. So a handgun is a lot harder to use accurately in that respect. So they are more difficult to use. Rifles are generally, I wouldn't say easy to handle, but it's easier to get up to speed on a rifle.
Right.
And California Department of Justice, if you are watching, that configuration is legal in New York, although it is not legal in the state of California where I am, and he is not. Just to clarify.
It's totally no, Scott. This is a California legal rifle too. It's a fixed mag.
Oh, it is? Oh, is
Yeah.
it fixed mag? Oh, okay, gotcha.
It may or may not be convertible, but it's a fixed mag.
My comedy with the guns just striking out here. Sorry, but there are different configurations that are really kind of weird. Like I wish I could run downstairs and grab mine with the ridiculous thin grip on it, because that basically allows you to have detachable magazines. And
I think the bastardization of guns wouldn't have as much effect on the not so knowledgeable. So maybe if we had comparisons, we could run. Oh well.
And
Yep.
speaking of bastardization, is there, and if the answer is no, that's fine. But is there any aspect of guns that, through any of your perspectives, there is a negative that you see in it?
Yes, guns existing. If guns didn't exist, we would live in a more peaceful world.
But they do.
But they do, and that's the hard truth. If guns didn't exist, a lot of historical atrocities wouldn't have happened. And I mean, selfishly, I don't wish that guns had never been invented, but I kind of do. But since they're here, might as well,
I disagree.
Yeah, we would be talking about bow and arrow control if guns didn't exist. So it's
It's like a
one
non-argument,
goalpost to
I
another,
guess.
essentially.
Yeah, you own a stick and
Um,
string. That's a tent to assemble right there.
Yeah, and it's also important to remember that a lot of people they harp on this idea of, oh, if we just ban the sale of guns, we can solve the issues of violence in this country. Oh, if we start like banning this type of gun and that type of gun and only restricting this. Oh, if we have mandatory confiscations and quote unquote government buybacks, we can reduce the violence. And they fail to realize the actual number of firearms in circulation around this country, both legal and illegally. And the idea that you're going to mobilize some kind of force to go door to door and search everyone's property and confiscate firearms it's optimistic, I'll say that. Feasible, probably on the lower end of nil to not ever happening.
Right.
Well, to put it in perspective, there are 434 million guns in the U.S. as of last count, and that's only the ones we know about.
Right.
And that's just absolutely crazy. But I kind of do want to tangent off of that comment that Eugene made really quick. So if you banned the sale of guns, what would happen? Well, a while ago, maybe something would have happened. But now, I don't know. This isn't really common knowledge. But guns are relatively easy to make, especially with the advent of 3D printing technology. If you go look up 3D printed gun on Twitter, you'll find some interesting accounts that have been doing things like printing pistols, printing rifles, printing assault rifles, and using hardware store parts and 3D printed frames to make serious weapons. And this has actually, not just been a hobby. This is, I don't know if you know what's happening in Myanmar right now with there was a coup and the military took over the government. The people weren't happy about this. So they got on Twitter, found the people, got the files, and 3D printed some guns for the guerrilla fighters who are trying to take the capital back right now.
Wow.
And I mean, that just warms my heart. It probably won't warm everyone's heart, but that makes me very happy on the inside.
I want to add to that.
I mean, hey, people fighting against tyranny.
Yeah,
right?
Maximum liberty. Let's go.
Hey, Julian, I wanted to add to that. People don't know. I don't remember which country it is. I don't know if it's Brazil, but Brazil, Rafael, let me know if I'm wrong. I think it's Brazil. They've actually published data where they showed that they've banned guns, but they were actually making them. But making them
guns are made all over the world.
Yeah, but I mean they were making them
home manufacturers.
But they were making them out of pipes, man. They were making like these one-shot kind of like post-apocalyptic guns, I mean,
I think I know exactly what you're talking about. There's a really funny picture that you usually see on like cursed gun image boards or cursed gun meme reviews on YouTube, and there's this one where it's a Brazilian police officer holding up this huge 8 or 12 shot 12 gauge revolver that looks something like it belongs in Warhammer, and it's assembled by just getting some metal pipes and other easily available hardware components. Like if you live near a hardware store, a Lowe's, Home Depot, mom and pop hardware store, it's really not that hard to get all the things assembled to create a homemade firearm. I mean, look at the Ludi submachine gun, a actual fully automatic firearm built by a civilian in Australia. I'm not saying it's the best firearm, but I'm saying it's a working firearm.
Right.
I think,
and then too, like historical firearms are a big, avenue too. Like, I mean, you could buy a World War I 1911 and it still works. They're really easy to maintain because they're analog devices. So even if you got rid of 3D printing and normal retail guns, you could still basically keep a gun functioning for, probably like at least 150 years or so, if not more, with the right
so my point as a big firearms liberty guy is not only would banning guns be unproductive and simply take them out of the hands of the people who we want having them, namely I think my theory of this is that the vast population of gun owners in the U.S. kind of acts as a deterrent to the bad ones. And the fact that we've reached this point, who knows? You could say a lot about if you could start the U.S. over and figure things out differently. Maybe there's a point to be made there. But with the situation we're at now, the last thing you do is remove that deterrent.
Right.
And we've reached kind of a homeostasis here where everything works. But that's the wrong take to try to disturb that. I think improving it is an honorable goal, but trying to throw that balance off is not a good idea.
Yeah. And I don't even know the exact figures, but it's like we have more guns today than ever existed in the history of the U.S. And 15% of all gun owners today are new gun owners since like 2020, the start of the pandemic. So tons of new gun owners, just tons of new guns, that are owned legally, and homicides are down, or at least gun-related homicides are down. So that completely goes against what everyone thinks.
And the best part is over 65% of those new gun owners are women or minorities.
Wow.
Yeah.
Which is just awesome.
Yeah. The biggest proportion of them, are women and African Americans. So that's amazing.
And that doesn't surprise me that we've seen such an uptick since the pandemic, because I feel like depending on where you live, like there was definitely an uptick in crime in certain places, like in the height of the pandemic, where there was lots of things going on. There was the discussions in regards to, ridiculous discussions, but discussions in regards to abolishing police and things of that nature. And I feel like most people were not really in favor of that. And it makes sense to me that you'd have a lot of people who'd want to find a means to protect themselves during all of that.
Well, I think it made a lot of people think, because, if you abolish police, then, police aren't really an effective preventative measure for crime on an individual level. So it kind of gets you thinking, like the revelation Scott had, if I wasn't there with my wife, what would have happened? Right. Somebody who lives alone,
exactly.
What would happen? If you don't have a dog, you're pretty much at the mercy of whoever's,
Well, unless you have my
stuff.
dog, which you may have seen a couple of seconds ago, he's not hurting anyone.
Yeah, sorry, I forget that most people don't have.
They bark a lot.
My dog. I have an overly large dog.
Well, pugs think they're overly large dogs.
Insurance.
That's the funny thing.
All small dogs.
Yep.
All small dogs. But,
small dog complex.
And Julian, back to your point about like how all these people are like running to buy guns, and it's like, people who are more Democrats or more left leaning kind of got to taste firsthand gun control, like the gun control laws that many of them probably supported, especially in California or New York, like Scott. And it's like, people think the world is going to shit, and like there's looting and rioting all over the place, and then people just want something to protect themselves and the family, and they can't get anything. And it's ironic, but it's better that people are realizing it now than when it's already too late. I think it was a good wake up call for a lot.
It's basically like watching someone who. It's like watching somebody who didn't like hammers because they could be used to hit people, but they never used a hammer in their life. And then one day they ran into a time when they needed a hammer, and they suddenly realized that, campaigning against hammers for all those users is really stupid, because boy, do I need a hammer right now. And I've made it basically impossible to get one, or very difficult to get one. And this is just impractical. That's like the revelation we saw America on large having over 2020 and early 2021.
To my point about police response times, I literally had a crazy neighbor show up at my door and bang on my door with a hammer, and it took the police 2 hours to show up, which that's technically assault with a deadly weapon if I had opened the door, but I didn't open the door. I also didn't shoot him because we don't have, we sort of have the castle doctrine here, but that requires them to actually break into your house. So I think Texas, you could just shoot through the door and, no problem. But yeah, it's just like police response times. You can look them up on like pretty much every police department usually publishes them, and they're just like pathetically low, especially in the San Francisco Bay Area. I think like, TS knows a little bit about this, but like tier 1 is like life or death situation. And the response time is like on average of 7 to 12 minutes. And you think about somebody in your house, like probably not there for very good intent. 7 minutes is an eternity when you could be dead in 30 seconds.
Yeah, I definitely want to add to that. Like, while I don't work on the PD side, I mean, the response times can
Well,
range. I mean, they range, right? Borough, city. It hovers around 10 to 12 minutes.
yeah, well, EMTs can't go in until the cops have cleared
That's
it.
true.
Unless you're down south,
But
where
like
the
as
EMTs
someone
carry it.
who's had a family member, um, Julian, you good? Yeah. So as someone who's had a family member who's had two people, well, I would say at least one person threaten to get a weapon, which was not legal. Another person who's pulled out a weapon, right, because they wanted to show they were tough or something. Mind you, with a child, right, in tow, right? So someone threatened to pull a gun out in front of someone with a child, right, in broad daylight. This is what New York City's become. And like you call the cops and it takes them, let's say 10 minutes to get there. And then they don't even want to file a police report, So this is pretty much so it's like defund the police, but you can't protect yourself. And this is kind of what, it's kind of like a tough situation. Like I wish the laws weren't like that here because we have that right and we should be able to exercise it. But it's kind of like the government wants you to rely on them, right? Because that's how New York City is, right? The government wants you to rely on them. Call us when you need help. But they can't even do that because like there's so many things going on now where they're like defund the police. So it's kind of like cops are afraid to do their job, but we can't defend ourselves. We're not allowed to. It's kind of like this weird thing that's going on.
Well, I think the real make or break is for people who are on the fence is anybody who's ever been in a situation where their life was being threatened by another person. They might not like it, but they understand why gun ownership is a thing. I was in that situation after I, bought my first gun, and I'd been doing it for fun up until then, and I realized, oh, well, this is a very good reason. This is no longer just fun. This is I didn't have to shoot or point a gun at anybody. The presence of the gun was enough. But I like at that moment I was just shaking afterwards, just adrenaline all through. And I was like, okay, yeah, this is not just fun. This is life or death. And It might not be every day. It might not be ever again for the rest of my life. But I'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it.
Yeah.
Well, the shitty thing is,
and that's something that we try to stress.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Oh, and I was going to say that's something that we try to stress in our organization. It's just like it's like it's better to be prepared, and it's something that everyone should think about. We're not saying everyone should have a gun, right? Not everyone deserves to have one. Everyone that is an American citizen and is not a felon or any of that stuff. They have the right to, but not everyone deserves to. But we always stress that it's like something that people should think about. It's because you don't want to be in a situation where it's too late. Like the lady, we were talking about the lady who got followed up to her apartment and got stabbed. That's too late. So, that's just something that we just can't stress enough is really, really take the time to think about it, see if it's right for you. And if so, do it the right way, get the training, get the education.
And one thing we talked about with Walk the Talk America, they're a great organization dedicated to, promoting mental health. And, for example, if you're feeling suicidal and you own guns, they want to make it, a normal thing to be able to give your guns to a friend to hold on to until you're
or an FFL
feeling stable again. Yeah, any way to, but that sort of thing. One of the big things we talked about is if you don't feel like you're responsible enough to own a gun, verify that. Go try one out. See if it's something that works with you and that you realize, oh, this is a tool. But if you genuinely feel that you cannot own a gun, don't. It's very simple. If you don't feel like you'd be safe with one, or you have people in the house who would be unsafe around a gun, don't. It's a choice, and you need to make the most responsible choice for yourself and your family.
Totally.
Yeah, and another thing I was going to add was just, what a part of our mission is like also helping people to understand the gun laws and like policies in their state. A couple of people mentioned brandishing. That would probably actually get you a harsher crime in California for taking out the gun without having a CCW permit than it would for the person like attacking you, which is complete bullshit in my opinion. But it's like you better at least understand what you can and can't do in certain situations.
Yeah. Well, I was in a state for the California Department of Justice. If you want to extradite me, I was in the South, so fuck off. Yeah.
So to wrap it all up, I would love for everyone to, in a few words, just say how, like through your perspective, how like what guns mean to you. Like what does it mean to you?
Okay, guns are the most empowering item I think any person can own. An amazing equalizer, ton of fun, and I think it gives people who understand guns a great deal of respect for the fragility of human life and the responsibility involved with, being able to take a life. It's really it's just being a grown up, I guess.
Yeah. Ditto everything Raphael said. It's that and like the epitome of like self-reliance and self-responsibility. It's independence, I would say, in those things. But yeah, ditto everything Raphael said. It can be a huge responsibility. It's a serious thing, and we need to take it as such.
Yeah, and I would say for me, it's an insurance policy I hope I never have to cash in, basically. I'd rather have a gun and know how to use it and never have to actually use it than find myself in a situation where I can't and I'm completely powerless or my family's completely powerless. So one of my biggest goals is that, when my daughter's old enough, I want to take her out to the range and get her, comfortable with using firearms because, unfortunately, most attacks and crimes are against women, especially Asian women in these terrible assault cases that are going on right now. So I think it's just more important than ever for, females especially to know how to use a firearm and be comfortable around it and don't feel like they have to rely on someone else to protect them. It's all about self-reliance for everyone.
Yeah, and I'd say for me, they're a tool very effective in giving you a way to defend yourself, defend your loved ones, and a way to give you kind of like a fighting chance. And at the same time, it is a great hobby, a classic American pastime, something that anyone can get into, improve upon, and become experienced at, where it has multiple functions and purposes outside of just for fun.
All right. Well, you guys pretty much said everything I wanted to say, especially you, Raphael. So eloquent with your words. But I think like it resembles freedom, people, again, I don't want to make it too political, but we see what's going on in the world now. If you don't like something your government says, they pretty much are like, they're going to send the army against you. And, we've been seeing that in certain parts, in Myanmar, as you mentioned, Raphael, in Myanmar, there's that whole coup going on. There's some stuff going on in Canada. And I think it keeps your government in check. There's also a big term in the Second Amendment community. The phrase is the Second Amendment protects the First Amendment, and the First Amendment protects the Second Amendment, kind of thing. So I think that definitely stands true. But like everyone said, it's an important tool. You should know how to use it. It's not a toy. I think it's as American as apple pie and hamburgers and. Yeah, I think that, I hope that, my dad came to this country. He's from a communist country. And like when he came here, he said that, you know, they were teaching kids how to shoot guns in high school. And that was like, no, that was in the 60s. He came here in the 80s. But he, you know, I hope that we can go back to how it was in the 60s and 60s and 50s, where like you were teaching people how to do that in school. And I've actually been seeing that on social media, where they're actually teaching kids how to do that in high school now, or they're starting to teach them again. Because right, if it's all about safety, let's teach people how to be safe, and not prevent education, right? Because when you take that away, you know, it's just not cool. You know, it's our right, not just that. You know, it's a God-given right, not just something that's enshrined on a piece of paper. You know, so I feel like I went on a bit of a tirade, but
no, all good. But yeah, this has been really great, guys. I feel like I definitely learned a good amount about guns that I may not have known before. And Mr. Soup, we definitely have to schedule going to the shooting range one of these days.
Yeah, so what you need to do is you guys need to go to Pennsylvania. Don't stay in New York to go to the range, because unfortunately in New York State, you have to have a license to own a pistol before you can legally touch a pistol.
Eesh.
And once we get off,
I saw your face, Julian. I see that face. You're like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Yeah, welcome to New York State.
People just don't know about this stuff, and it's ridiculous.
So bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, New York State rifles are whatever. Like they let you own them, but pistols are just the devil here.
Yeah.
They really hate them.
I mean, it's like I thought California laws were bad, but then New York was like, hold my beer. And everything I've heard from RAF and TS has just been kind of eye-opening.
No, you guys have it good out there.
Aside from having a 20-year-old Glock, but, you know.
Yeah, try having a Glock.
Julian, we can teach you more about these archaic laws on episode 2.
Yeah, totally.
We should do a deep dive, but I also want to... next time I'd like to do some more definitions. You know, like kind of, I noticed us skipping over some language that would have confused me when I was getting started. And I'd like to, you know, make sure that people understand what's being talked about, because, you know, we've all been around guns for a while. We tend to use shorthand. And, you know, for example, the difference between a magazine and a clip is something that, you know, a lot of people get confused about. And we know the difference and we just use it without thinking about it. So things like that, I'd like to make sure we get those hammered out. Also, Julian, yeah, you wrote an intro, and I'm assuming we're dual publishing this to each of our respective audiences.
Yeah, sure.
So would you like to record your intro too? Because Scott did ours, and I realized.
Yeah, don't worry about that. I do that separately, so it's
okay.
fine.
Good.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, sweet.
I just need you just send me the audio, and I'll edit it.
So, are you audio only?
Well, I usually do YouTube as well, but
okay.
Like, yeah, if you send me both, I can like look at it, and it's just harder for me to edit the video portion.
Okay.
Like if you guys do that on your end, if you just send me the edited one, I could push that, but audio I could do that myself.
Okay, yeah, because this records all separate tracks. So if you want all the audio tracks by themselves, so you can, you know, mute things or whatever.
Yeah.
You should be all good. Also,
yeah.
I think we can stop recording.
Yeah, we probably can. I mean, for our audience,
well,
we're having a fascinating discussion about the.
Well, one thing before you stop, just
yes.
If you want to just quickly say, like, mention like your like website and all these other things. Like, I'll put it in the description, but usually I have people say it at the end, just, you know, so they hear it as well as see it in the description.
Well, yeah, I mean, our website, as listeners may know, is aapigo.net. You can email us at info@aapigo.net as well. But we're really active on Twitter. I think that's kind of like where we sort of have most of our fans and fewer paters than Instagram and Reddit. But, you know, it's fun. We are on all those platforms in various capacities, but I feel like Twitter's kind of like, that's where we've kind of found our folks.
Hey, Julian,
and
if your followers can force the algorithm and like and comment on any on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram, that would be great as well. You know, force the algorithm.
Sure, yeah. If you just, like later on, if you could just email me all that,
yeah, for sure.
I'll include it in the script.
Yeah, on our Twitter, which is AAPI Gun Owners, you will find plenty of retweets of my shitty Twitter account making some really stupid takes. So enjoy. It's entertaining if nothing else.
Yep. We're also sort of trying to get on TikTok, but I'm kind of trying to figure out what the format is. I mean, do we do like, shitty music with gun demos? It's like, this is a magazine. Boop. And then we do a happy
Scott,
dance with a Glock. I don't know. Maybe I should do that.
Scott, we'll leave that to you, because you're in California. You're the one who knows how to, flick your wrist.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
All right.
Okay. Well, thanks, Julian, and everyone for showing up this week. We are going to be back week after next, as always, and getting back on that bi-weekly cadence. So thanks for your patience as Season 2 got underway, but we're back and happy to have you along for the ride. So this has been the AAPI Go cast for February 18th, 2022, and we'll see you next time.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks, Julian.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.